Today we are going to look at how Freddie Murcury loved Jimi Hendrix. I'd really like to thank my buddy Richard James for voicing this episode.
Why Freddie Murcury loved Jimi Hendrix. At face value, Freddie Murcury and Jimi Hendrix might seem far removed from each other, but there is much that connects them. Both were total iconoclasts, a breath of fresh air who augmented their timeless records with an on-stage dynamism that remains unmatched. Freddie Murcury is considered by many the best singer of all time that inspired millions of musicians around the world. In an interview, the vocalist explained why Jimi Hendrix was his biggest hero. Before becoming a rock star, he was still known as Farouk Bulsara and was an art and design student, besides an aspiring musician, at Ylle Art College in the late 60s. Added to this is the fact that both flames extinguished long before their time, imbuing the heights that they hit in their life with real tragedy, making fans think, what if they had lived longer? As it is certain that their game-changing efforts would have continued to make the world a better place. Despite their untimely passings, by the time Murcury and Hendrix departed this mortal coil, they left the world in a much better place than they found it. Queen's dedicated fans will be aware that the connection between Murcury and Hendrix runs much deeper than their artistic similarities. In the 1989 Queen track, The Miracle, from the album of the same name, when mentioning the wonders of the world, Murcury name-checks Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix to the Tower of Babel. It transpires that Murcury was one of Jimi Hendrix's biggest fans. When he was still Farouk Bulsara, an art student dreaming of making it as a musician at Ylle Art College in the late 1960s, he was captivated by the Purple Haze musician's style and stage presence. Hendrix so inspired him that he even kept a photograph of him on his bedroom mirror for daily inspiration. He also drew the artist and dressed just like him, as a rare photo shows. Besides that, Murcury would also travel around the country to watch the guitarist performing. Murcury once said, Jimi Hendrix was just a beautiful man, a master showman, and a dedicated musician. I would scour the country to see him whenever he played because he really had everything any rock and roll star should have, all the style and presence. Interestingly, for a time, the future Queen frontman even wanted to be a guitarist like Hendrix, but eventually came to the conclusion that he would never be as good as the once-in-a-generational talent. So he concentrated on piano. This tool would have a defining impact on the creation of the icon that we all know as Freddie Murcury. Freddie added, he, Hendrix, didn't have to force anything. He'd just make an entrance and the whole place would be on fire. He was living out everything I wanted to be. Hendrix is very important. He's my idol. He sort of epitomizes, with his presentation on stage, the whole works of a rock star, he said elsewhere. There's no way you can compare him to anyone, and there's nobody who can take his place. Murcury also revealed that he was inconsolable when he heard that his hero had died in 1970. At the time, he was already playing with future Queen legends Brian May and Roger Taylor, and so they paid tribute to him the night he died. In his honor, they performed a medley of Hendrix staples such as Voodoo Child, Purple Haze, and Foxy Lady. When Freddie Murcury was still Farouk Freddy Bulsara, a student and wannabe pop star at Ylle Art College in the late 60s, he kept a photograph of his idol Jimi Hendrix on his bedroom mirror. Freddie Baby, as his fellow students called him, would tell everyone that he was going to be famous. Bigger than Hendrix? They'd ask. Oh yes, he'd reply. I'm gonna be mega! And yet, one of his earliest friends in England also recalls the aspiring singer peering at himself in the same mirror and asking, why am I so ugly? Freddie Murcury was a man of contradictions, a shameless peacock on stage, shy and insecure off stage. As a teenager, he'd often slip his top lip down to hide his prominent teeth when talking or having his photo taken. He was still doing it after he'd made it in Queen. Watch any of Mercury's filmed interviews. He never lost the habit. It's the one trace of Farouk Bulsara, the man he used to be, that survived the transformation into Freddie Murcury. On stage, of course, any insecurities evaporated. What made Mercury such a compelling frontman was his ability to inhabit the character. And Freddie Murcury was a character, a persona created by a Hendrix-obsessed teenager who worried he wasn't good looking enough to be a pop star. Mercury kept the outside world at arm's length and never let journalists or photographers get too close. But he understood the power of image. Queen drummer Roger Taylor believes Mercury was a product of mind over matter. Freddie almost willed himself to become a rock star. By believing he was a star, others started to believe it too. The unconventional looks didn't matter. The photographs in Freddie Murcury, An Illustrated Life, plot his development from a gauche schoolboy in India and Zanzibar to a stadium rock star, and all points in between. They capture him in repose, in the studio, away from the spotlight, and in his natural environment on stage. Whether dolled up in silks and satin during the Killer Queen era, or working the crowd at Live Aid in nothing more outlandish than a gym vest and jeans, Mercury's command of a live audience was extraordinary. The songwriter, Mike Moran, worked with him in the 80s and claims the metamorphosis into that Freddie Mercury was almost terrifying. He turned into this monster of a man, like Arnold Schwarzenegger with a voice. The monster seemed to physically grow in stature as soon as the curtain went up or the camera came out. But Mercury almost brought a sense of humor to any show. However grandiose Queen became, he was always there with a wink, a grin, or a knowing glance, as if to say, don't take it too seriously, and don't take me too seriously at all. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll be back with the best content I can, and a big thanks to my buddy Richard James for voicing this episode. If you would like to voice one for me, please let me know at ChinaGuitarSkeptic@gmail.com. In the meantime, take good care.